Welcome, Dan. It's nice to speak to you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Just to give a bit of a background for people who are watching this and don't really know where the connection comes from, you're Dan Schmidt. I'm Jason Schmidt. And to the best of our knowledge, there's no shared genes or any type of relative or any type of connection from a biological standpoint.
Mhm.
I think it's just a cool story, and you and I were speaking before the recording started. But how I came across Dan was his Awakening the World series that's most notably on YouTube, at least from my experience. And I just had that natural connection, being someone who's connected to the universe, one mind, energy, a lot of different ways that it's put out there. That natural synergy of just seeing each other's last names and then, yeah, reaching out to you and I think we went back and forth, you and Lilla, 20 different emails here and there.
Yeah.
And so it just showed that organic, natural connection to be true. And it also showed that I think everyone listening to nothing's inaccessible in life. With the technology we have, with the connections we do have, sometimes a simple outreach to another genuine human can create a meeting that's naturally formed like today. Yeah. But I guess, yeah, did you want to say a little bit about yourself, Dan, and introduce yourself a little bit?
Uh, Sure, sure. Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate our connection and I appreciate the writing that you did, which kind of gave a sense of the path that you're on and the synergies between our work and yeah. So in terms of my own um, bio, or I guess I've been sort of on this pathless path for many years, and at one point in my life was just really kind of deeply in the matrix, and just living out a sort of scripted, conditioned life. With a lot of suffering and just stumbled onto samadhi and awakening. I ended up at a Vipassana center eventually on my path. And yeah, it just, an experience there changed the trajectory of my life. And then there's been a deepening and many different stages of unfolding along the way since that initial little glimpse. So my passion is to just, there seems to be an aliveness around, awakening and exploring what this is, and conveying it through films and through talking to people, and most recently the Awaken the World initiative, um, putting things together, sort of all my favorite tools in one spot to put people in a sort of I sometimes call it conditions of no escape for the ego, where like we can't, with the conditioned mind, make awakening happen, but we can create these conditions that make it more likely. So everything we'll talk about today, it's just words. The best we can do is just offer pointers to what these conditions are, that will allow someone to have a direct experience of their true nature, and it's that direct experience that changes everything. It greatly relieves the suffering in life, and to me, that awakening is it's the most important thing on a personal level, but also in terms of the way we live on this planet, the awakening of that consciousness would change everything, because mostly human consciousness is ego based right now. There's a lot of you know wanting and grasping and
Mm.
all the institutions and different things in the world are a reflection of that egoic consciousness right now. So I feel like we're at a threshold of um, possible change, and so that's kind of what is alive for me and exciting, and yeah, I look forward to diving in.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. And I think once people start talking about awakening, it's almost like a different language that the world's getting used to. What would you, just to simply describe, how would you put that into words, what awakening is?
Yeah, so I would say on the simplest level, it's finding out the truth of who and what you are.
Mm.
So when so to contrast it, when we're not awake, when we're identified with a character, if I believe I'm this Dan character, going about its life, and there's certain inherited um, conditioning. When we are born, that consciousness is having this human experience, and there's this identification that happens with the character, and it comes along with all this conditioning and sort of a robotic script that is playing out within the character. So when we have an awakening, we realize we're not that character. It's kind of like, if you, the analogy I love to use is it's like if you went into a VR game and you were playing this game for a long period of time. You play it for years. You forget that you're in the game, and whatever your avatar is in the game, you think you're that avatar. So awakening is recognizing the consciousness in the game, so that you're not this character, you're not anything in the objective world, but you're the somehow, it's like in the VR game, you're playing the game. You're the one to whom all experience is arising, or the awareness of that experience. Yeah. Hmm.
I like that analogy, the virtual reality, because I think it's something we can relate to.
Hmm.
And that's what humans have an easy time with the content, the ego base, as you referred to as well. And then when you start thinking of it from an abstract manner, it's like, what do you mean I'm not Dan? Or what do you mean that this is the vehicle I'm driving? And I like to I speak with this about clients, not necessarily awakening, but more of the labels. I think humans are labels and learned habits. And if we strip beneath all of that, that's where you're hinting at where consciousness comes from. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah. So who am I, or what am I, beyond thoughts and sensations, and beyond, there's this field of changing phenomena that makes up the human experience. And so we have this sort of filter of language and sensations, perceptions, the preferences within the character, and even this part of the mind that's witnessing all of that. There's this attention faculty that moves around. So all of that is this field of changing phenomena. So the inquiry, to me, the beginning of a true inquiry is, is there anything that I am that can be directly experienced that is not changing? There's something that is real, or you could say permanent, or that is not just coming and going within this field of change. So when we go into self-inquiry, we have this intention to know ourselves. It's this ancient imperative: know thyself. And at first, what we see is this field of changing phenomena, because our attention has been on the world of thought and the world of name and form. And this habit pattern of the character is very strong. So so at first we see what we're not. Basically, we see everything that we're not. All these changing forms. So these labels of, if I'm a teacher or a doctor, or I'm this or a that. All of that changes through life. But yet there's something that I am. You could say a beingness or an I amness, that before I acquired any of those labels. When I was a little baby, there's like a beingness in that little character. And at the end of a human journey, it's that same I amness or beingness that is present, even though there's this continuously changing um, human avatar here.
Hmm.
So the awakening is when we directly experience ourselves to be that which is beyond name and form, and no one can tell you what that is. I can point to
Hmm.
it in a million ways. If I made the best films in the world, they could point to it. They're like the finger pointing to the moon. But if we're just looking at the finger, we'll never directly experience that moon. There's a sort of flip or a leap that one makes from this whole field of changing phenomena to the direct experience of who and what they are. And it's kind of like waking up from a dream, and no one can tell you what that is. It has to be, at a certain point, all the teachers and teachings and pointers have to be let go. And there's this inner investigation that happens where we let go of all of that. And it's mysterious. It's mysterious. And in my experience, it's when we put ourselves in these conditions of no escape for the ego for long periods of time where we're continuously turning attention away from the conditioned and from thoughts and sensations, and just staying with that sense of I amness, directly. And of course, the mind will generate all its phenomena, but we just keep coming back to that presence that is here. And all of the great teachers throughout history, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta, they all spoke about this, I amness or awareness or the self, whatever name you want to give it. They're just words, but there's something that we are that they're pointing to, something formless that is, that pure consciousness itself that can wake up.
Hmm. Yeah, and even as I listen to you speak about that and explain, the fingers, as using or continuing the analogy, will never be enough to truly understand. They need to almost fall away and dissolve. They're almost a means to an end. Here's the finger pointing you to the moon, but in order to actually experience that I amness, everything has to fall away. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, and to me, I've watched people go through these processes at retreats, and have had the fortune of having a meditation center, and really getting curious about how it works, and it seems that there are these stages that people go through, where initially. We're hooked into all the phenomena of the world. The attention is just always on thoughts, and
Mm,
so much that it's like a fish in water, not even knowing that it's in the water.
mm,
It's all we live and breathe is the thoughts and sensations, and we're constantly identified and caught in that. So the initial phase is to sort of recognize you could say, coming to the witness. So we start to witness all of that phenomena. So it's not just arising unconsciously, but we start to see the habit pattern of the mind, and we gradually there's this sort of separating out where we come to this witnessing position. And I would say that's the first stage in sadhana or practice, is to recognize that we can just witness. There's this witness here, um, and the deepening of that, of course, is like there's still, even when we come to that witness, so we're not caught in the thoughts and sensations. So there can be a great sense of peace in that. It's sort of the first turning of away from this wheel of samsara, or this endless mechanism of suffering. So there can be a huge relief in just coming to that witness, a sense of peace and tranquility. It's like relaxing a muscle almost. It's like, I'm not that that character. I can just witness that character. I can just witness the thoughts. So there's that recognition, but still there's still duality there. There's still a separation. So there's the witness and witnessed. There's subject and object. So there's still this split, and there's still a filter there. So the deepening of this investigation is to then it gets more subtle. We go into it deeper, and even that witness can sort of fall away or dissolve, and that takes us into a direct experience, a kensho, or an awakening experience, and that's where there's no more duality, there's no more subject and object, but what is arising and what knows the arising are one. So there's no me that is in that witnessing position anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and I would say, there's we can have those, really beautiful direct experiences, creating these conditions, or sometimes life will create those conditions as well. Sometimes life just provides an interrupt in the pattern. So there've been a lot of people who, they'll have some tragedy or an accident, or end up in the hospital, and it's like a forced meditation retreat almost. So
Mm.
so life can create those conditions. It doesn't have to be meditation. If there's a willingness to sort of surrender and be present with what is arising. Um, so so whatever offers that glimpse, then we get a sense of who and what we are, and that can be, if it really sort of lands, if there's a recognition where that awareness wakes up to itself, it can be the end of seeking at that point. The seeker who's trying to awaken, or trying to achieve something on a spiritual path, we recognize that seeker to be the false conditioned
Mm.
self. So there's no more, I don't have to look for who I am. I recognize the awareness that is always here. But yet there's even after that awakening, there's an ongoing sort of clearing process or purification then that goes on, for can be for years and years after that, where any remaining vasanas or conditioning will come up in different facets of life. So I leave the meditation retreat or wherever I was, go back to life, and certain things will get triggered in life. So fears of money, or insecurity with childhood friends, or whatever it is. These
Mm.
different scenarios will present themselves, and it's an opportunity to then see whatever is remaining in the unconscious mind, and just see it, just allow it to be as it is.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned how you're clarifying the conditions, because I think a lot of times with individuals who maybe haven't taken as deep of a journey into this topic, think it has to be this, Buddhist monk meditation, pure silence, pure presence, no distraction, and pure nature. And it's like, well, I work a 9 to 5. I have kids. I have this job that's stressful. Whatever, you can go through the laundry list of pressures that humans have these days. And so, with that on our plate, it could present those opportunities, right? We might view them as challenges, when in fact, maybe they're opportunities that are guiding us toward direct experience.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's something you relate to, or if you have a different viewpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to me, it's not so much what's happening in, the matrix. It's our capacity to observe the habit patterns of the mind, and so we can observe those habit patterns in any life, any facet of life. And to me, I would say, like there is a benefit to going into silence and going into the cave and meditating. There's a beautiful sort of tranquility that can happen when we take time out from the busyness of life. So I think there's a time and place for that sort of retreat and to create conditions of that are going to lead to a quieting and stilling of the mind. So that's very beneficial. But also, if we just stay there, we just stay in the cave, we never get to see the vasanas and the things that may be hidden. They may never get triggered because we're just sitting in a cave. So life is really where our sadhana is practiced. To me, going into life, having a family, seeing the reactions of the character when the kids are getting upset or whatever,
Mhm.
all of that. It's an opportunity to apply the same principles that we apply in meditation, to just see the conditioning of the mind, inquire like who is reacting if there's a reaction, and that inquiry to me deepens with life, and the more we have in our life, the more broad our life is, the more dimensions of life we have. I would say the deeper that realization can be. So it's not about running away from life, or
Mm.
there's some paths may be that, there are beautiful examples of people who have sort of disengaged with life, and it's like the flowering of their unique journey was that, but for many people the flowering may be completely different, maybe having a family, maybe being the CEO of a company or whatever it is, but it could be done without identification, without without the mediating I thought involved with it, So it's just life living itself in an infinite number of scenarios.
Mhm. Yeah, and you mentioned, I guess, kind of very related, not necessarily awakening, but those individuals who have different life paths, I think is where I'm headed with this. Do you believe that we all come here, or we're all here and we have a set path that we just, if we tap inside, we'll discover our true unique path? Because there's not going to be 8 billion CEOs in the world. And then there's obviously not going to be 8 billion monks, or the world wouldn't operate. Because sometimes I struggle with the fact of, if you are going into nature and using the example of the monks once again, and not necessarily directly giving back to society in a way that it needs to function, that there's some level of recluse and selfishness of, hey, the world, you can deal with your problems. We're going to go over here and just mind our own business and live out a peaceful life, which in some senses sounds pretty great
Mm-hmm.
if you're seeking peace and avoiding suffering, although there are challenges on that journey as well. I'm wondering if you think with the I amness, does each I am have this, I don't want to say predetermined because I don't believe in predetermined, but this path that if we discover, will at least be most aligned and most fulfilled with our life?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I feel, there is a commonality. Obviously, like the one or the self is, individuating in all these different ways. And to me, I see, these 8 billion beings here as, it's almost like the one wants to experience itself in all these different ways and different facets. So I see this sort of paradox where when we recognize our true nature, when we awaken, we're awakening from this belief that I'm this limited character. So there's a freedom from that script, but yet what happens then is it's kind of like what Carl Jung calls individuation. So it's there's this unique individuation of the one, and so it's almost like the character, or the unique individual that you can be comes to life actually. So the I thought is this contraction in within the individual. It's like a resistance. So the fears and the saying no to life, it's like an energetic contraction. When we awaken, that energy becomes free, but we don't lose that individual that we are. It's not like we, within the avatar, there's a unique expression of the one, and that comes to life actually with awakening. So we don't become, this dull, uniform kind of.
Mm.
People get this idea about awakening, as like you're just sitting around meditating all day, and that might be true for very rare beings, like Ramana was kind of like that. He just sat around most of the time, and that was a beautiful, unique expression, a very you know, beautiful individuation. But it's not about emulating Ramana. It's like you have to examine who you are. Find out who you are,
Mm.
and whatever that unique expression is. A lot of people after an awakening, different skills may come to life. They start writing poetry, or they start creating music, or whatever it is. Sometimes the voice will change. The crown or the throat chakra will open, and
Mm.
those types of things. As the energy comes to life and moves, this individuated being can come to life and evolve, and go through its evolution. So I think that's all part of it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how you talk about new skills being gained or maybe revealed, because perhaps they're probably already there. And then there was just some blockages, like you said, with the throat chakra. I can share you an interesting story on that, where 5 years ago, I did a call with, I think she was like a seer, spiritual advisor, something like that. And she was picking up my throat chakra like through our conversation of the phone. She even started like coughing and couldn't get it out of her throat. She didn't figure it out till a bit later in the call of, oh wait, I'm actually channeling your blocked throat chakra, which
Yeah.
was such a curious experience. And I know a lot of people, I should say not a lot. I know some people who may listen to this video and be skeptics saying, well, how did that happen just over a phone call? And after re-listening to the video, it ties to our conversation today. She said, Jason, mark my words, 5 years from now, you'll be speaking up. And I didn't know that until maybe 2 months ago, Dan, because I'd revisited the clip and I said, wow, how uncanny that April 2026,
Mhm.
well, April 2021, I guess 5 years ago, and now that we're having this kind of conversation. In addition to that story of the throat chakra, when you're on the path or you're the seeker, you don't always understand that the answer is within, so you're still seeking externally.
Yeah.
And my personal example, when I sent you my book, Universal Breadcrumbs, was a testament of that. I've always loved writing. I've always been passionate about it. And then since probably elementary school, I didn't do much of it because we were told you don't make money off that, you can't make a career. And then when I went to my journey in Australia and had my awakening moment, it came out 5, 6 years later through my book.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily a skill that I didn't have. It was more so forgotten. So I've awoken in that realm.
Yeah.
And what I've realized since then, it's not just about the book, right? It's finding different avenues to get the message across. So it's us having this organic discussion today. It's now starting off, after 6 years of hiatus on social media, spreading messages that way or through. the book there. And so it's a testament to what you're saying about the skills. And also, I think the fact that you can fall back asleep very easily. And that's in subtly in a way that it just lulls you in a hypnotic way. So when I came back from Australia to this society, which as I mentioned before, I live in southwestern Ontario, so that rat race, that hamster wheel once you buy back into it for necessary survival, if you're living in this area, you can lull yourself back to sleep. So I find myself on a daily having to remain awake, if that makes sense, and stay connected. Mine is just before bed, like 30 minutes of time, because now I do have a family. So I don't have the time that maybe Ramada did when he was sitting in those caves.
Yeah.
So what can you speak to about the like give and take of wakening, falling back asleep, awakening. How would you
Yeah.
describe that?
Yeah, it's exactly what you described. It's possible, and I see it all the time where, people will, for example, do our 7 day sadhana, have an awakening, find out who they are, but the incredible pull of Maya and the incredible pull of the mind is and the mind's capacity to deceive itself is so strong. So what happens, and I think everybody goes through this process. I think I haven't met one person who just has an awakening and they're good. It's like the mind will come back at some point. Like when someone has a Kensho experience, there can be, sometimes a day of total pristine clarity and a sense of ease, or sometimes a week or 2 weeks, or even a few months sometimes. But at some point, the conditioned mind will come back. And when it does, it usually takes ownership of the awakening experience. So it says, I awakened, I did it. And that's when, it'll start writing books and creating movies and all this stuff. And before you know it, it's a spiritualized ego that is running the show again.
Mm,
So understanding the mechanism of how it will appropriate over and over. Excuse me, whenever there's an I, or you know a you know a self with preferences, and this knowing part of us. To me, the Zen teaching of beginner's mind is the most important teaching on this path. We have to always come back to this beginner's mind, and as soon as we catch the knowing mind, developing all this information and thinking that it's got it all figured out, we clear that again, and whatever practice we do, whether we call that meditation or, after an awakening, we don't necessarily need to do a formal practice. It's sort
mm,
of a practiceless practice where we just by being, just by watching that mind, the energy will sort of clear on its own. It'll just clear the mind. So we don't have to do anything anymore. The techniques that we might have used at the beginning of the path are not really necessary for that. But that clearing process is ongoing, and the pull of Maya and the pull of samsara is very, very strong. And the one thing I've learned on my own path is, the mind's capacity to deceive itself is huge, and I've gone for that ride over and over. So
mm,
where I've ended up is kind of like what Socrates said. I only know that I don't know. You know,
mm,
and if I can stay there, in that sort of beginner's mind, there is a sense of ease to that. If I don't need to know, I understand that knowing mind is the filter. Then there's a freedom in that. There's a liberation in that.
yeah. No, I love that. And I also love, I don't know if this is term you coined during this call or before, but the spiritualized ego,
Mm-hmm.
because that's just a really sneaky way for Maya or the mind to pull you back in without you knowing it. Like it's like a cloak that gets put over because yeah, if you're celebrating this awakening or being able to label it in a way like I did it,
Yeah.
then actually you're further away from awakening than you think you are because you're hopping once again into this identification and these labels of what you are. And I think another what you finished with about just being okay not knowing. Humans are terrible at that, and the mind is terrible at that because we want to always have some scientific explanation. We're really poor at sitting in discomfort and the unknown
Yeah.
because if there isn't something concrete, then we come to the realization that we are actually just living in chaos,
Yeah.
and order is in itself a costume that Earth's wearing also. Right? This is not order.
Yeah.
What's going on. Like if anyone can look around the world right now and seen all the things, like that's not order, that's chaos. And we try to slap on reasons for why it's happening. Oh, this war is happening because of this reason, or the president's doing what he's doing because of this reason, when it really is just, as you say, if we just sit there and allow things to be without judgment, um, that's such a challenging part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what comes up listening, that's very well said. I think that capacity to just see what's happening, without evaluating, is the most important skill. To be able to hold different perspectives, without choosing one or the other, but just by allowing everything to be what it already is, just seeing it, so not identifying with one side or the other side. Then if we can allow life to come through from that place, so my ego hasn't taken a side, it hasn't picked a position, but what does life want to live now through? When I get that little I out of the way, what there's something deeper that starts to come through, and to me that's what is, that's what nature is already doing. That's the Tao. It's the Tao is already doing its thing. So if I can kind of align with that by getting myself out of the way, how does life want to live through this vessel? And I think that's what's going to change the world, is when we start to do that collectively, and we're not thinking we know the answers. And because if we look at what's been happening, it's, and one side believes they're right, another thinks they're right, and it's this back and forth, and this struggle, and this endless dance of ego identity. So so that humbling, or that ego death, sort of, that we have to go through, where it is scary for everyone who does it. It's like it's unknown. We don't
Mm.
know how life is going to move through, and we're not used to being out of the driver's seat. So the little self desperately wants to feel like it's in control, even though, as you said, it is chaos. It's not really in control. It's just creating more craziness on the planet. So, um, but to me, there's been a deepening of, I would say, almost like a faith, or a trust in that intelligence, or that Tao, that life. The more I've let it take the reins of life, the more I've seen how beautiful it is, how I get to glimpse the higher poetry of life when I let go. So I would say, that little Dan character is starting to be more okay in the back seat, starting to trust more. And to me, that's what true faith is that, just allowing and trust in that intelligence. You know, we don't have to call it God or anything, but
Mhm.
you could, But to me, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Just that trust and faith and allowing that everything will work itself out once we remove ourselves out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a you could call it the big mind or the Dharmakaya, whatever it is. The yeah, there's an intelligence that sort of comes online, and it is so mysterious because like from the little intellectual, analytical, evaluating mind's perspective, it doesn't know.
Mm.
It has to be in this not knowing state, this kind of surrendered state. But on a deeper level, there is a knowing, but it's like you only know in the moment. It's like there's an aliveness or an energy that comes through, and there's just a trust that you'll know, or it'll express the way it needs to express in the
Mm.
moment. But you can't hold it. You can't commodify it. You can't insert it into the memory of the character. So it's kind of like we put ourselves in this state of connecting to the source and just trust that you know whatever's going to happen is what's meant to happen.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I think a lot of that too is the practice of surrender. And humans are also very terrible at that because, in my experience, it's like, okay, we need to have a plan. There needs to be set steps that can be executed and generate X outcome. And that gives a structure. If I have my plan, everything will go swimmingly. Whereas awakening is kind of the opposite of that, if we're at least on the other end of the spectrum
Hmm.
of no, there doesn't need to be a plan. I think there's a general direction of seeking the I amness, but you can't set out steps. Like you said, you can create conditions,
Hmm.
but you can't hand me a manual today to be like, all right, if you do these steps in order 1 to 10, then you will be awakened.
Hmm.
It's that feeling. It's so hard, right? Until I think even until you experience it yourself, it's even hard to disseminate that information to other people
Yeah.
because it's like how do you describe a feeling of knowing? Because even that, even saying feeling is something that is part of the costume that we wear, like the thoughts, the emotions. So until I think you have that direct glimpse, as you say,
Yeah.
we can only do our best to be those finger pointers. But that will never be enough until that person is ready inside internally to accept, to surrender, to trust, and to have faith. And until they do that, it'll always be elusive, or at least that's how I see it. Do you see
Yeah.
it differently?
Yeah. No, I think each person, when they come to this path, they have different things that will create those conditions for awakening. So for me, for example, my body mind was really messed up at one point.
Mm.
A pathological state of the body mind, and what I needed at that time was. There it was almost like there was so much contraction in the body mind, and I got into a form of vipassana meditation where it was like this constant just recognizing that clenching and letting it go, and literally for years just worked on that. I knew intuitively that there was this contraction that was creating this sense of not being at ease in the body and the avatar. So until that flow got corrected, I think awakening is possible, without any condition. But I think there's a certain sort of ease and flow. It's like the filter is not as dense, um, and we loosen up the filter, or enlighten the avatar, then we create these conditions for awakening. So I think, yeah, like, and everyone is different. I think I've seen people who have done 40 years of meditation, and they don't get the glimpse. And I've seen people come to a meditation retreat who are absolute beginners and have an awakening right off the the first time.
Wow.
So so I can't predict, if I think exactly what you said, like we can't reduce it to a formula. It's very mysterious, and it's almost like the self will awaken when it wants to awaken,
Mm.
when we're just playing these characters, we can do all this stuff, but it is like in a VR game. If you're making your avatar do meditation, but that avatar never awakens. There's nothing that avatar can do to make awakening happen, because consciousness awakens from that. So long as we're identified with the character, it actually doesn't matter what we do. It's a bit of a cosmic joke in that sense.
Yeah. Another paradox
Hmm.
that we experience. Yeah. Well, one thing that I always struggle with too, and it's on the same notion, and I think you referenced it earlier in this chat about how we are awakening, and there's a really impactful opportunity right now for society to awaken as a whole. And at the same time, there's a lot of resistance in this world. There's a lot of kind of becoming a little bit more, how do I say? Because it's not going internally. Like everyone's pulling back, whether it was COVID, whether it was social media, whether it's, pulling back from society is where I'm trying to get at. And the spiritual community, which I've kept in touch with, it sounds like a lot of people right now are starting to speak up and saying, "Hey, like this is a monumental time. This isn't clickbait. This isn't like some Instagram algorithm we're trying to pop out a video just to get followers." But the struggle then comes down, it's okay, so if the spiritual community is aware of this, and I give it as a label just to make it a little, to make sure there's like a contrast with others who might not be talking about this topic right now, how do we shed some light and I guess steer individuals, or using your previous metaphor, point the finger to the moon? Like, how do we get more people part of the movement?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've sort of with Awaken the World, I've explored that through creating films and creating the perpetual sadhana system and that. But I think what it comes down to is every individual goes through this transformation. So when you look at the world right now, like that pulling back that you're describing, is important. That's the first step, is really seeing how we've been operating, seeing the script, pulling back from that script. And then there's a danger right now, especially with, like, as things are dismantling. So the old structures are dismantling at a very high rate, and things are changing very quickly. You could see, I think of it almost as a singularity, and it's like we're approaching the event horizon of that singularity. So it's getting to the point where on that event horizon, all information, all possibilities are there. So it nobody can predict what's happening. Nobody
Mm.
can see how this is going, because it's like everything has gone beyond that threshold of knowing. Um, so I see, that on an individual level, to just allow, again, it's coming back to that not knowing mind, the beginner's mind, to allow ourselves to move through this without getting caught. Like as things are dismantling, it's easy to for energies to get caught in reaction, and especially when it's affecting livelihood, it's affecting things that are important for human life. So it's very easy to get caught in reaction. But
Mm.
so if we can move through this, truly inquiring, staying with, our that beingness or I amness. To me, there's an alchemy, there's an unfolding happening here, and it's like we're in the dismantled phase right now. It's like the caterpillar and the cocoon, and it's not a caterpillar, it's not a butterfly, it's just you know it's just sort of germinating, and that's kind of where we are with humanity right now. And to me, there's that faith or trust in that intelligence, whatever it is that's turning the caterpillar into the butterfly. It knows what it's doing, and I feel there's something working on a human level as well. There's something unfolding here, and to me, it's beautiful, but it's also messy, and it's yeah. So I think just allowing that to happen, and to notice the mind's reaction to all of it, and not get it caught in these battles, that are happening right now. Just
Mm.
stay far from that, because even if it appears to be a spiritual battle, it there to me there is no spiritual battle. There's no such thing as a spiritual battle. It's only the ego that battles. So a true spiritual unfolding is, to stay with that true nature, to see, directly what we are. And then, once I know who I am, I see who everyone else is as well. It's the same thing. So then there's no more battle. Once I know who I am, and once I see who everyone else is, I can't go to battle, anymore.
Mhm.
You see the truth. So to me, that's what's going to change everything. Is those that are willing to go through this death of the ego without without reacting, without um, getting caught in the matrix, in the Maya. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like there's a couple of really good things you said there. So there's this sense or knowing or feeling, whatever word you want to choose, of this transformational period happening right now in the world. And kind of what we already spoke about is we can't predict it. We actually just have to live in the mystery and the unknown of it. And your answer my question will actually really change the way I should have asked it, because I'm saying, how do we affect the movement? Well, that's futile. That's the ego that came out of me. And if I step back and recognize the really only thing we can do is act from the I am that we know we are.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that cliche of leading by example. I found, and I'm sure you have with the following you have, when I start to speak to people now more about these concepts, whether it be in person, whether it be through social media or any type of form, they were already thinking about it. And I think they were just too scared to speak because it sounds really weird. Like when we start using the words, like especially sometimes with my wife, she's like, "You're really weird," using these spiritual terms. I'm like, "Yeah, but to some people, I'm not. To some people, we speak that lingo. I call it the language of the universe. I mean, there's so many different labels we can put to things, but in this community, when we start speaking about it, it's very much understood. And so after you speak, it just leaves me thinking, you're right. Our job isn't to control or to steer. That would be way too ego-based, because what is one person going to do with 8 billion? It's when that connectiveness comes. It's when that you at least share when people are open to hearing, what might this awakening be about? Because I do think there's a point of readiness also. I know, yeah, a near-death experience or a big life event can prompt it really quickly. I equate it to when I'm doing therapy. If someone's not ready to truly engage in the therapeutic process, they will never find themselves. They will never be there. Once they've set their own conditions, because as you've mentioned, there's many ways, but once their conditions come into place, and they begin to awaken, it's also another matter of patience. That's where faith comes in. I think you and I, or perhaps people in this community, want to be like, let's go, like, come to our place, which we found. It's really fun. It's really cool. It's really peaceful,
Mhm.
and let's all go now. At least that's my personality. I'm passionate. I'm enthusiastic. I'm like, guys, come look at this really cool thing that I've discovered and found, for lack of better words, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you answered that beautifully. And we just need to trust what's happening. We need to, when we do feel that knowing, just tap into those energies too, because that will naturally, around the people we are, express and kind of be contagious and come off on them. Or at least that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's to me there, that there's like analogy with what's happening in meditation practice. At the beginning, it like the mind has all these ideas about meditation and what we should be doing, but eventually, true meditation, just becomes just being,
Mhm.
and there's a sort of burning up that is just happening. It's like the
Yeah.
lotus of what we are is in this fire of transformation, and we can't know what comes out of that. And the more we go with that, it's like energies of life will just move when they want to move then.
Mhm.
And just on a personal level, my partner Lila and I, we're doing these creative projects sometimes, but sometimes, it's like the energies just aren't there.
Mhm.
The mind might think, I should be doing something, or, I gotta, keep things going, and the Awaken the World YouTube channel and all that. But there's no energy there. It's just a quiet period, and sometimes we just have to allow that to be, and we don't know how long that'll go for, and then it's like out of that sometimes a wave will come then, and the energy will just take you then, and it's clear. It's not I don't have to think about it. It's just like you just go.
Yeah.
And so I think that willingness to just burn in it, just be in it, and allow. I think there's on a personal and collective level, there's an alchemy happening right now, and
Mm.
sometimes, yeah, patience is, just being with it fully. It's not even waiting for something, but actually just being with what is in the moment,
Mhm.
being with that, whatever it is. It might be, a feeling of depression, or some traumas coming up from the past as we disengage with the old pattern. All of that stuff gets revealed. Collective samskaras can be felt on a personal level as well. All of it. So just honoring it, just allowing it, saying yes to all of it, because this is how we bring light to the shadows, is we that willingness to just see and feel and experience.
Yeah. And you hit on something there too, where you don't have to really have patience if you're being, because if you're being,
Yeah,
you just are. And if you just are, you're not waiting on anything. It's
yeah,
just that very, very moment. You're not thinking to the next second of that plan. Um,
yeah,
and to your personal example of you and Lila also, if we were on a continuous trajectory of growth and we never had a chance to rest, one, firstly, we would burn out. And two, we would never really allow that growth to process in us, to
yeah,
take that pause between creative projects, because creative projects also take a lot of energy.
yeah,
And the ones that are the purest form and the most genuine, the ones that people resonate with, like your videos. I mean, how many are there now? I think there was a three-part, maybe there's four parts on YouTube for the Awakening the World.
yeah. So there's Awakening Mind series that I do with my partners Bill and Leif. So there's three Awakening Mind films, and then the Samadhi series has four parts. That's the one that
Okay.
I've done on my own. So yeah. Yeah, and each one, it was there's many years in between, or they take a long time, because what has to happen for me to be a delivery mechanism. There's stuff happening in my own path and my own journey. So there's many false starts with those films. Literally hours of footage gets thrown out. It's like it feels like at the beginning there's this feeling that I feel like something is alive, but it's almost like stuff has to get cleared out. The mind has to do whatever it's going to do, and then it's like, okay, got that out of the way. Now let's actually begin again. And yeah, so it's definitely not a like in terms of a normal way that people make films. It's not efficient in that sense, or probably not a good business model for making films. But it's the organic uh,
Mm.
aspect to it is so important. Otherwise, there is no if we were just to create from the mind, it would just there would
Mm.
be no transmissiveness or no life in it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of like when they say if you stop focusing on the thought or trying to get the exact result that you want and your expectation, then true knowing will come through. Like when you're in the shower or when you're doing something that you're not fully focused, and you'll have those almost aha or epiphany moments where just some knowledge or some answer to something you've been seeking for so long just comes in.
Yeah.
And yeah, with that kind of just connects to everything with the awakening and your videos.
Hmm.
Why are they so powerful? If you would have planned and scripted everything out, I guarantee they wouldn't be as powerful. But now you're allowing that organic nature to fall through, and the words to just come out without any refinement. Like even in our conversation right now, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but to everyone listening, like, we didn't script anything. This is very raw, it's very organic. It's our first time speaking with our faces showing to each other rather than through email. And I imagine, or at least my hope is after people do watch this video, they can sense that. And then the answers that came out of us from within are more pure than they would be if we were to have a rigid script or something that is just black and white words that maybe we're searching for the ego, or maybe we're searching to appease and people please ways that others, or trying to predict that others would want to hear, rather than pursuing the path that we're pursuing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I feel like there's yeah, that mind's tendency to yeah, to want to portray a certain image, or all of that. There's a when we kind of recognize the beingness that is here. It's not even about providing answers for people. It's not, I do like weekly sort of check-ins with people who are doing the sadhana, and it's like it appears on the surface to be like a Q&A kind of thing. It's like people are
Yeah.
going through their process. But I think in a true sort of investigation, like a conversation like this, it's not about providing answers, and
Yeah.
it's actually something deeper. It's as Ramana would say, it's the dissolving of the questioner is what we're actually, um, pointing towards. Is so yeah. When things come up, if I'm in that kind of a conversation, I feel beyond, even if there are questions, um, it's not about answers. It's about actually seeing where do those questions come from. Who is questioning, and just kind of pointing again, that little finger pointing at the moon. Who are you beyond that questioning mind?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to take a pause and redirect a little bit more towards what you're doing, because I was obviously attracted to your work, which led us to speaking today. And I spoke to you before just about any way that I can allow you to have more light or some more leverage to see what you're doing because I do think your work is very impactful and I wanted to take the moment to allow you to maybe distill a core message or core messages that you'd like the world to hear.
Yeah. So I would say, for those who are, interested in awakening, there's something alive, something that has made you watch this video to this point. So if there's a true sort of longing to find out the truth of who you are, um, the putting yourself in these conditions of no escape, for me is the best way to bring that about. We can read books, we can maybe cultivate a personal meditation practice, and all of that is great stuff. But if we take a period of time to stay in continuous practice, so continuously just abiding with um, beingness, so continuously disengaging from the matrix. There's something that happens in that. There's an energy that builds, and the creating of those conditions will make it more likely for awakening or kensho to happen. So I would say, if there's a draw to that, we've created a 7-day retreat. There's no, it's by donation, so there's no bar of entry to it. Everybody can do it, and yeah, just engage with it. And if you've had an awakening, this same process, the same practice is a very deep clearing process as well. So if you've had that glimpse of your true nature, but maybe you've gone back into the world, and you don't, whatever state might have been experienced, you know the your true nature is not a state.
Mhm.
Whatever's coming and going, all states come and go within the body mind. So if there's this memory of a state that was the state of ease or a beautiful state, um, this 7-day retreat can start to bring clarity as to what it is we're really doing, and maybe dispel that whatever seeking there is of those states, to recognize that which is present in all states, the true nature or awareness, that is the knower of all these different states. And when that becomes, the recognized and known truth of who and what we are, there's a peace that emanates from that, and that peace is not contingent on anything in the external world. It's a
Mhm.
peace that flows from beingness itself.
Mhm. Okay. And I think part of that too, Dan, it sounds like, or at least we've communicated through email before, that it's not about the information, like more information and layering and like providing these tangible books or ways to achieve. You're talking about experiencing or showing the mechanism.
Yes, yes. So essentially, the retreat is
Mhm.
just being, for 7 days, and all the pointers, and there's teachings and things that are just pointing to the beingness that is here. So at the beginning of the retreat, there are techniques that are offered to help settle the mind, and all different things work for different people. So some people may find those techniques useful, but there's a dropping away of the doing and the doer and the techniques, and as the mind starts to settle, the whole retreat is really just being continuously present, and
Mhm.
and recognizing how the mind wants to take us out of that in a million different ways. So doing, it's doing meditation in silence with others. We have 4 periods a day on Zoom, just doing silent 1-hour sit.
Mm.
And then we do self-inquiry dyads in the evenings, um, where you're working with a partner, inquiring directly into who you are. And
Yeah.
it's a very beautiful, sort of difficult technique in a way. Very, very easy, but not, um, uh, I would say simple, but not easy.
Mm.
It brings up all the conditioning that is in the unconscious mind. So very quickly, you get to see um, all the things that have been kind of pushed away in the past.
Mm.
So if there's a willingness to step into that, a willingness to go beyond your comfort zone, because it can be not comfortable, feeling all the things that were pushed away, and stepping into the unknown,
Mm.
stepping into a don't know mind, just allowing yourself to just be for 7 days. It's the most beautiful gift that can be given is for you to directly, um, just be, and
Mm.
you already are. So there's nothing to do in that. There's nothing to achieve, but it's this momentum of identification with the seeker that will start to drop in this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I like how you used it's simple but not easy.
Hmm.
And I think just what we were saying with just being, like the concept, the logic around it is just to be.
Hmm.
And then our mind comes in and goes, okay, what does just to be mean? Okay, how do I just be?
Yeah,
And we get lost there. But it's almost like, okay, just be, take that pause, or have a light, I don't want to say barrier, but recognizing almost back to that witness observer stage
yeah,
of what is the thought that's coming in right after I say just be.
that's it. Yeah,
Why just not just be, you know?
yeah,
Sounds like you're
yeah.
facilitating and fostering and incubating that with your teachings.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, with the self inquiry, there's this intention to directly experience who I am. And either I will, or the mind will, there'll be some, okay, I'm here, but, and then the mind
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
come up with the next thing. And that's the clearing process. Then you get to see all the beliefs or the tendencies of the mind, and eventually the mind will exhaust everything. It might go on for days and days, in this process, but um, eventually the mind will give up. Sometimes it gets exhausted with itself and then just can't do it anymore. So when the mind gives up, it's exhausted, it's confused. So who remains then? When that mind has sort of dropped.
Okay. And I guess I know we're coming close to our time here. I like to end on a very positive note, or at least a hopeful note for individuals who've made it for this far in the video and maybe are struggling having faith or struggling believing that this transformation from the cocoon to caterpillar to butterfly that's organically happening right now. What would you say to, I guess, to foster a little bit of faith or ones that do have faith to keep their path?
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say, there's nothing that you have to believe in what we're saying. I would say if there's that true, spark of curiosity, you know, don't believe anything that we're saying.
Mm.
Just but investigate. Just really, if you owe it to yourself, in this human experience, this is our birthright as a human being to directly find out the truth. So, um, I would say, yeah, if that's alive in you, do investigate, find out the truth for yourself. Take time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the Awaken the World retreat. Take out time. Just be, and see what happens. When we let go of all the mind's conditioning and this fixation on thoughts and the matrix, and go all the way with it. Go as deep as you're drawn to go, and Yeah, but don't. There's nothing required. No belief required. No one way to do it. And I would say there's something within every being that knows the way home.
Mm.
And if we can feel that, connect with that intelligence. There's nothing a teacher can tell you, or nothing that any of these pointers can truly convey. It's that deep knowing within yourself. If you trust that, and it's connected to a sense of ease. It's connected to a feeling of liberation, and you'll know that you can trust that. It's a very you know unmistakable feeling that will start to guide you home as you disengage from that analytical, knowing, thinking mind.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think that's especially the don't believe everything we're saying here, because the natural cause of our conversation will be there's some ego, there's some human experience, some soul experience. Like it's almost like a melting pot of all of that in order to express and get our message across. And what came up when you were speaking there intuitively is perhaps, and correct me if I'm wrong as I go along this organic metaphor that's coming up, perhaps we're just the mirror. And if you're watching and you're feeling something stir up inside, whatever word or whatever portion of the video you did, then you're actually just looking at yourself. That knowing, that inner way home is just saying, hey, your antenna's going up. Like this isn't Jason and Dan's knowledge. This is something that wants to be cultivated a little bit further, perhaps in that present moment, and just sitting there and taking time for yourself. I'm not sure if you feel that's an adequate way of looking at it.
Yeah, I love the mirror analogy. I use it often. So, yeah, I think whatever you see, like if you look at another person, another being, it is a mirror. It is always a mirror, and there's no awakened person here. It's like Suzuki Roshi said. There are no enlightened people. There are only enlightened actions.
Mhm.
There are enlightened words or enlightened expressions, but there's no person. So whatever you see reflected back, we only see what is in the objective world if it appears outside of us. So if we see that as a mirror pointing back to ourselves, we start to see the truth. That
Mhm.
it's not about what appears in the mirror. It's actually seeing the truth of who and what we are, reflecting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're coming up on time, so I did want to thank you for making the time. I also want to just share a message too with everyone that it's just possible to connect with a like mind if you're brave enough to just send out a message, to just believe that, there's more connections in life than just your own self, right? In this world right now, and the technology, if you do feel alone, if you feel like you're part of the spiritual community of no one to talk to, there are people out there. Whether it's the ones like you who are in the forefront with no fear of sharing your message, and it could be the ones too, the silent ones who aren't speaking. You never know what might happen if you start to speak from your inner true self instead of the egoic costume that we wear and the labels that we buy into, the habits that we formed and keep going back to that aren't working for us. So I think, yeah, Dan, you're a very inspirational individual in this community, not only from my personal experience, but as I shared before, when people started to reach out saying, "Hey, are you related to Dan Schmidt?" It's like, no, but yeah, I like the work that he's doing, and I'm really appreciative that you take your time out on this Saturday morning to connect with me.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, and I feel we are related, just on a different level. So yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Amazing. Thank you for having me on show. And yeah, I love your final message, so I'll leave it there. And yeah, thank you.